The Water Advocates mission is to advocate for a balanced, equitable, and resilient water future for all New Mexico through public education and engagement and civic participation, with urgent insistence on initiating and accelerating the transformative change necessary for New Mexico's successful adaptation to increasing water scarcity. The Water Advocates' main activism areas are located on the traditional homelands of the Southern Tiwa, pueblos of Cochiti, Santo Domingo, San Felipe, Santa Ana, Sandia, and Isleta, the original peoples of New Mexico, Pueblo, Navajo, and Apache. Since time immemorial, have had deep connections to the land and have made significant contributions to the broader community statewide. We honor land itself and those who remain stewards of this land throughout the generations, and also acknowledge our committed relationship to Indigenous peoples. We gratefully recognize our history. I'm going to turn it over to Anne now to introduce our speakers.
Thank you, Brittany. And so I'm Anne McCartney. I'm Vice President of the New Mexico Water Advocates and also a staff attorney part-time at the New Mexico Environmental Law Center. So I had a particular role with the Niagara bottling protests. So we're really excited from the Water Advocates to have this speaker series about Niagara Bottling's LLC's application, along with the village of Los Lunas, to lease an additional 500 acre-feet of water for Niagara's bottling plant to put more of the Rio Grande Basin water into plastic bottles. Several critical entities protested the application, including Valencia Soil and Water Conservation District, a citizens group, Valencia Water Watchers, the Pueblo of Isleta, and the councilman and mayor of the town of Peralta. The New Mexico Environmental Law Center assisted Valencia Water Watchers with their protest letter and garnering support both locally in Valencia County and statewide. So we are pleased that Teresa Smith de Sharif, a dedicated water advocate and chairwoman of the Board of Supervisors for Valencia Soil and Water Conservation District, Kathy McCord, a founder and board member of Valencia Water Watchers, and a representative from Isleta, Pueblo, can all speak to this application and why it is bad for the state of New Mexico. So we will start first with Teresa. And as Brittany said, it was actually my bad that there was a mix-up on dates, but we're hopeful that our other two speakers can join in after we get started. Teresa?
Hey, thank you very much for this opportunity to join you all today, and especially for the advocates who have been waging this battle far longer than I have. So the title of my presentation is Water Conservation versus Water Blag. And I picked this word blag because it really does show how this whole project of Niagara in cooperation with the village of Los Lunas is rather devious. And I think it's a plan that, as you see as I get into it, is fairly nefarious. So by background, I'm a physician by training, and I respect science, but I'm a lover of the law. I grew up in a family that we literally had conversations around the dinner table about law, and my father earned an honorary doctorate of law, I think because of that. So I'm not one of those doctors that doesn't like lawyers and advocates, just wanted to set that out. Okay, and I'm currently chair of the Valencia Soil and Water Conservation District, and I'm chair of the new entity called the Valencia County Arroyo Flood Control District. And I am not adept very much anyway at all of this technology, so I'm so happy that Brittany is helping me to advance the slides and we can go forward. So what I hope to discuss with you today is the role and standing of soil and water conservation districts as regards matters like this pertaining to water resources. And I hope to share a little bit of data from Valencia Soil and Water Conservation District, and that's both data that looks has just recently looked at what the resource concerns are of people from this very large district and how a water blag impairs water rights, affects public welfare, and undermines water conservation. Next slide. So this is who I'm representing, the Valencia Soil and Water Conservation District. We are a large conservation district. We serve 5 counties and 2 pueblos. So the entire Pueblo of Isleta, Pueblo of Laguna, all of Valencia County, northern Socorro County, and even part of Sandoval County. They're all in our district. Next slide. So when I wrote a letter on behalf of our district to the Office of the State Engineer, one of the things that I wanted to make clear was that we have standing to weigh in on this. Soil and water conservation districts are political subdivisions of the state of New Mexico. We're local public bodies, and our existence is enshrined in New Mexico statute, and it's commonly called the District Act or the Soil and Water Conservation District Act. One of the things that we're charged to do in that District Act is to further the conservation, development, beneficial application, and proper disposal and use of water. And by the application of various measures, conserve this natural resource, also in the statute. Next slide, please. So we have a particular mission. One is to make sure that we serve all the residents in our pueblo. And here is the mission of the Valencia Soil and Water Conservation District. We provide education, technical assistance, and recognition to past, current, and future land and water stewards in the conservation of natural resources, including water, soil, plants, and wildlife. Next slide. So we had not had a new long-range plan since 1997, and I wrote a grant to the New Mexico Department of Agriculture, a new pot of funding that they got from the New Mexico legislature, and that gave us the ability to put together a new long-range conservation plan, which our board adopted on May 15th. You will see shortly why this is relevant. Next slide, please. So what we did was we came up with a novel way of trying to survey the natural resource concerns of district residents. And that survey was going to be the foundation for our new long-range conservation plan. There used to be a thing in conservation districts where we'd have a list of cooperators. I mean, landowners and others who were interested in our work and they were on a list. Well, we haven't kept a list of cooperators in forever. So I came up with the idea of using the last folks who participated in a soil and water conservation district, and there were over 8,000 such individuals. And we reached out to them with a postcard, and you'll see that postcard right there in front of you. That postcard invited residents to participate in this natural resource survey. So they could access it by the QR code or calling us up, or we'd mail it, a number of ways. When you send out a survey by mail or even by email, the rate of response is not that great. If you get 1%, you're lucky. We didn't have this survey open for more than, I would say, about 6 weeks, and we had a 3% rate of participation. So our N number, of course, I would have liked to have it been higher, but it was 260 people from all corners of our district. Okay, next slide. And just to give you a graphic idea of how big our district is, you're seeing that right before you. So it sort of in the central part of the big polygon, you can get an idea of that Rio Grande going on basically a north-south course, and everything inside of the blue area is our district. And then up at the very top of the screen, that's part of Sandoval County that is within our district. And we're talking about an area the size of Delaware. 1.59 million acres. And a lot of people just think that we're Valencia County Soil and Water Conservation District, and we're far bigger, and that bears particular relevance to this protest. Next slide. So how is that relevant? Like I said, we serve two pueblos, and so I believe that gives us standing to say, well, this is part of our responsibility to speak up when our residents, and particularly our Pueblo residents, are being affected by or potentially affected by this type of water misappropriation or attempt to do so. So I just wanted to let you know, and you're seeing on the left of your slide, and I don't expect you to read this, but really having pages right about out of our new long-range plan is an invitation to you to actually go to our website and take a look at the plan. But the top two natural resource concerns were aquifers, depletion of groundwater from aquifers, and water quantity, scarcity of water as affected by increasing aridity and drought, decreasing snow mass and rain, and increasing temperature, as well as water excess, including water rights and water theft. So that means from the four corners of our district, you can see on the left there with the bar graph that this was, many people were concerned about that. Next slide, please. So what we did in our new long-range plan, I just want to make a brief mention of it, was we prepared, based on the resource concerns, some concepts of natural resource management and protection that we should be, as a district, pledged to engage in over the next decade. So we had a number of goals, and the first one, as you would certainly not be surprised, has to deal with water. So this whole goal A deals with water conservation and management, and we recognize that the 50-year forecast for New Mexico is a hotter and drier climate with, just like in the survey question, reduced snow mass, and that really points us to the real need to protect and conserve our water. There are many actions here that we pledge to undertake as regards to the conservation of water, and I invite you to go ahead and take a look at our plan. There's many actions dealing with the aquifers, water needs, water efficiencies, water quality, gray water, alkali waters, and rainwater harvesting. Next slide. So to harken back to the map that I put up, I think jurisdictional boundaries are important. We wanted to make the case to the state engineer that our opinion should count for something. Two elements of the Niagara plan are mentioned here, and they fall within our jurisdictional boundaries. So that temporary discontinuation of the diversion of water from wells in Bernalillo County is one of them. And parts of Bernalillo are in our district. And then the transfer of those water rights to offset depletions on the Rio Grande, which this kind of stuff drives me crazy because we're dealing with paper water rights, and I think it's very confusing for the public, and it really doesn't equate to real water. So the transfer of those water rights to offset the depletions from the pumping of groundwater from those 7 wells within the San Clemente land grant, well, those are within our jurisdictional boundaries too, and we know a little bit about that. Next slide. I'm going to circle back to the problem that our district has with those 7 wells here in a moment. But let me just say some of the arguments that we made. It was very clear in the directions that we received as regards making comments that we had to show that there would be impairment. So impairment of rights, in other words, a right to use the beneficial use of water, it is something that really affects, first and foremost, the pueblos within our jurisdictional boundaries. This includes Isleta, but also Laguna. People often forget that Laguna owns land that is very close to Los Lunas. If you drive out on historic Route 6, you will see that. And it is very possible, because we kind of have a checkerboard area there, that some of their wells for the um, uh, use of their own grazing with their cattle and other ranch animals could be affected. So firstly, we got that point. And then the senior water rights and sovereignty of the Pueblo. I think the Pueblos in our district would be impaired by this initiative of Niagara, and the water rights of the people of Valencia Soil and Water Conservation District outside of the Pueblos, as well as our water rights. So we made that case because not only is this affecting the people and the pueblos that we serve, but we as a district have water rights. So we own 279 acres of conservation land along the Middle Rio Grande. That is unique among soil and water conservation districts in the state of New Mexico. There's one that has 5 acres. But we have data that shows the hydrological connectivity, and our data, it's preliminary, but I mean, we can prove it. We have another study coming out, if it's funded next year, that wells on our property have been found to communicate with the wells that we've done tracers along the Middle Rio Grande and particularly the San Juan Drain as well, just outside of our Whitfield Wildlife Conservation Area. And we can see that this water goes back and forth. So our concept is, not only is it the Pueblos, it's everybody in our district, but particularly the Pueblos, and it's ourselves that would be affected by this water blag. Next slide, please. So when I said we know a little bit about San Clemente and those wells, our district back in 2009 actually went to bat for the people of San Clemente. I don't think another soil and water conservation district in the state of New Mexico ever wrote a brief of amicus curiae. We did, and it was in protest to the planned placement of a fuel storage facility out in San Clemente. We were really concerned for a number of reasons, but what is germane to this conversation is that the amount of fire abatement requirements, should that project that we protested in our brief have been approved, would have meant it would just water requirements that literally would have sunk the wells of people who live in the San Clemente area, and as well as affect the wells just across Route 6 and even to the west of San Clemente in the Comanche Ranch, and to the north of Route 6, the Pueblo of Isleta lands. So our issue is, is there monkey business going on here or what? Because our research showed that we're just not aware of continuous use, at least when we looked into this back in 2009, continuous use of those wells. So that would put into very question the validity of the water rights that are being claimed by Niagara and in their water blag. Next slide, please. So we tried to make the case, and I'd be happy to get our letter to anybody that might be interested. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I really applaud those who stand up for the rule of law and stand up for fighting that good fight. And this is a fight that needs to be fought. So I was very pleased to be able to do this, submit this protest letter. So how would this cause harm to the public welfare? Well, I hinted at this and mentioned it a bit about water connectivity. So there's going to be less water available if this water is pulled out. And we already are in a water shortage. We all know this. But if we use water wisely, there will be enough for personal consumption, public health, I mean, hygiene and the like, for our livelihoods and even for economic development. But another thing here, and this was shown recently in the case that came out, I think, in July, and I'm sure that the Isleta, I think it's their water rights attorney is probably going to present on this, but we know that this could affect the cultural practices, and that may sink this case. Okay, next slide, please. So here's where we can really weigh in. Besides understanding the hydrology of the river flows, we know what's going on from data in our own wells, and because this is the work that we do. Water conservation is foundational to soil and water conservation districts, but particularly to the Valencia Soil and Water Conservation Districts, because our land that we manage for the public welfare is right there. It's riparian, and it's in the historical area where the river used to flow. We mimic that water flow by irrigation. So what we have seen in over 10 years of water well monitoring on our 279 riparian acres down in the county area of Valencia, but it's technically a Belen address. I don't have the slide, I apologize, but I can provide it later. A 1-foot drop over 10 years in the water table. That's really serious because it doesn't include data for this year. When I add that data, it's going to be worse, because for the first time, and I don't like advertising it, but for the first time, we have had dry wells. Please understand that the water table is very close to the surface of our conservation area. So when we're seeing this kind of drop, we're in trouble. So I wanted to make mention of some new data that have come out. There's an article I'd like all of you to read if you haven't already. It's called Unprecedented Continental Drying, Shrinking Freshwater Availability, and Increasing Land Contributions to Sea Level Rise. This was in Science Advances on the 25th of July. I'm sorry I didn't put the author in there, but I can fix this slide for later. And basically, this area, the Southwest, is one of 4 regions in the world that is undergoing mega drying. And it happens to be exacerbated by the overpumping of groundwater and shrinking freshwater availability. So what does this mean? If you read the article, this is one of the quotations: shifting patterns of terrestrial water storage threaten water availability and sustainable water management for people and the environment, putting livelihoods, I added life, and food security at risk. Next slide. So that is where I wanted to end, because I wanted to leave time for questions. I think I've spoken quite a bit. I tried to touch on the salient points of our protest letter to the Office of the State Engineer, and I would stand for questions when the moderator deems it appropriate. But let me just invite you all, as folks that are really concerned with water, to attend our upcoming conference at the University of New Mexico. This is being sponsored by ARID through funding by the Thornburg Foundation and Valencia Soil and Water Conservation District. It's called Future Planning Scenarios for Drought and Drying in the Middle Rio Grande. That's going to be October 28th and 29th. Please let me know. I can put my email in the chat if you'd like me to send you an invitation. If you go to ARID Institute at UNM, you are likely to find more information. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I hope what I provided was relevant. I think that this case really shows us that we need to work together. All the agencies and pueblos and districts that can come together to stop this kind of water blag. Well, this is how it's going to be stopped if we come together. Only we can save ourselves. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Teresa. Excellent presentation, and really appreciate learning too more about the long-term conservation plan and the whole method and discernment of what were the highest priorities, which, as you say, dovetails so well with the protest at hand. So yeah, and if you would put your email, if you have it, in the chat, then people who are interested in the Arid Institute conference can reach out. And I believe that Josh Mann has joined us, and Josh is a water law attorney who's representing Isleta Pueblo on many things, but including the protest on the Niagara application. And Josh, are you ready?
I may need to make him a co-host so that he can share and unmute himself. 1 second. I apologize. I haven't done that yet.
Okay.
Anne,
Yes.
may I add just one thing which I am prompted to do with Josh joining us?
Yes, please.
Thank you. So we felt very strongly about putting this protest in for the reasons that I've stated, but also because the Pueblo of Isleta asked us to do so. And we are really clear that we're here to serve. And this isn't the first time that we've stepped up to assist both Pueblos in our district in some of the battles they were fighting, or, even with the federal government to get resources from the federal government. But this is to stop something. This is what we do, and we plan to keep doing it. As a matter of fact, today our board approved giving the chair the opportunity to make sure we can get letters in a timely fashion, because we only meet once a month. We don't want to miss the opportunity to save our critical resources. So you can count on us. We'll be there. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for underscoring that connection.
Anne and Teresa, we had a few questions for Teresa that were in the chat, and I can go ahead and read a few of those as well as a few others that had surfaced. So maybe we could just do a little questions for you, Teresa. One of the technical explanations you had, or comments that you had, that we wondered about, was the interconnectivity of the wells, the wetlands, with the tracers that you were able to measure. What does that entail?
So we work with a number of academics. One of them is the Bosque Ecosystem Monitoring Program, and you can actually, and this has been done in our area. So we have some preliminary data. We actually, as I mentioned, have a study that we hope to get funded where we hope to prove this. This water connectivity. So you can put a tracer, a radioactive tracer, in your well, or you can put it in a monitoring well right by the river, and you can go check the other well and find out if part of that tracer is there. We know that from preliminary data that the water is connecting, and from a geological perspective, it's obvious that it should, but there are ways, if we have to, in the future, that we can show what's going on out there in San Clemente with these wells. Do you see what I mean? So there are some really good scientific methods that are available.
That's great. Moving on to another question that was in the chat about representation from, you had a good number of responses to the survey, and then given the vast amount of land that you serve in the counties and pueblos, how do you feel that farmers and ranchers within that area were represented? What do your partnerships look like that or look like there? And what voices did you hear during the survey or since?
One of the defects with our survey is we didn't ask people to identify what they do is farming, ranching, backyard gardening, just a resident. We didn't do that. So I don't have the data that I can give you specific numbers. I can tell you though that responses came from all over our district. Most responses were anonymous. But we do have farmers and ranchers with whom we interact all the time. We do a lot of soil testing for folks and we come up with conservation plans. And they are very concerned about the water. We kept, for example, NRCS in our area because it's a federal conservation service to the people, and they were going to move to Albuquerque because of federal cuts. Well, we kept them in our area. So now we actually house a federal government agency, right? And that's local conservation at work to help the feds. But anyway, I'm mentioning that because we are now interacting with farmers every week because we have NRCS there 3 days a week. They come in. If NRCS can't help, we can. And I'm telling you, with the water curtailment this year, people are very worried. And they know that the flooding that we get is not paradoxical. It's part of this whole problem that we're getting water in heavier quantities at the times when we're not supposed to. So I believe that just from anecdotal and observational, but not quantified data, that we have a fairly good representation. And there's a chance maybe we'll open up this survey again. It would be interesting to do so.
That's great. Thank you so much. Brittany, just want to check in. We have a few more questions we can still ask Teresa, or are we ready to go with Josh?
I think let's turn over to Josh and then we'll have another longer question and answer session at the end of the presentations.
Great. Thanks so much. Thank you, Teresa.
Sure.
All right, can you all hear me?
We can.
Oh, good. All right. Well, I am en route from Durango, so apologies for not being able to be on camera or to share my screen. But Anne, I did forward you Isletta's protest letter, so if you have it, feel free to put it up on the screen. But I guess I'll just say a little bit. Well, first off, I was really hoping that Clint Lente, who's the natural resource director and a tribal member at Isleta and a farmer and an excellent spokesperson, would have been able to be here instead of myself because he really can convey Isleta's perspective much better than I can. But what I will say is Isleta is extremely concerned about this proposal, is very opposed to it, has met with PNM multiple times because they are have a partnership with PNM because there are transmission lines that run across Isleta, urging PNM not to enter into this extended lease or renewed lease. That was unsuccessful. But the concern is it's a shared aquifer, right? That doesn't obey the surface boundaries, and pumping just on the south side of Isleta's boundaries, because the wells are very close to Isleta's southern boundaries. There's lots of concerns as we were just hearing, and sorry I didn't get to join earlier and couldn't have heard all the conversation, but this groundwater pumping is of great concern when we need to protect our aquifer. And then the fact that this is, the purpose of this water use is really, I think, so offensive and concerning, right? We're in this region where I did hear that, we're in this, suffering from this horrible drought, one of the, most affected regions. I didn't know if it was in the world, but,
Yes.
Clearly we need to be protecting our very cherished resources. And of course, for the Pueblo, this is not just about water, right? I mean, their spiritual connection to the water runs very deep. And so here we have this proposed use where they're going to be bottling water for export for commercial benefit, And my understanding about, Niagara is a bully, and they forced their way into Los Lunas. They forced their way into this deal, and they try to. But we did meet with them. The Pueblo did meet with them, and they try to come off like they're this, great community benefactor, blah blah blah. That was, that. So I mean, that's how they're posturing, but we know the truth, that they are bullies and that they are taking this resource. And so Isleta has protested on the every ground you can, right? Challenging the validity of the water rights, claiming impairment to Isleta's groundwater resources, contrary to conservation of water and a detriment to the public welfare. And so, I will say that I am emboldened. I don't know if you all have seen the recent case that came out of the 13th Judicial District, Sandia Pueblo versus Rio Rancho, but it was a huge win for the Pueblo, and a huge win for protecting flows in the river on not just a quantity basis, but on a quality basis. And they found impairment could be linked to water quality, and Isleta suffers from horrible water quality issues. So that is a little bit more of a surface water related issue. But I will just say that, this is something that Isleta is prepared to fight all the way. Isleta's water rights, as I'm sure you all know, are not yet quantified. It is participating in a negotiation process with the other Pueblos, other 6 Pueblos in the Middle Valley, the state of New Mexico, and the federal government. And so we're working towards a resolution to their claims. Because they have been irrigating and farming since time immemorial. And Isleta has a very large land base and has very large claims. And until those claims are quantified, Isleta has concerns really with these changes and what uses Isleta together with San Felipe and MRGCD and protesting transfers out of the Middle Rio Grande and up to Santa Fe. And we have lots of concerns with the state engineer's policy on a variety of things. And Isleta is, pushing hard on these things. I just actually got off the phone with Sandia Pueblo's attorney, and they offered to help with the Niagara fight. So I think there is a lot of support out there and to defend against this. And I'll just raise one other issue. I don't know if the compact issue has come up yet, but is having a very hard time making its compact deliveries. It's over 120,000 acre feet in debt to the state of Texas. And any additional drafts on our water supply are hurting our ability to make those deliveries. And I know we're talking about groundwater, but it's the aquifer and the river are connected, so increasing draws from the aquifer has an impact on the river. We do have the issue that this is under Los Lunas's permit that has already been approved by the state engineer's office, so we're going to have to really think about how we're going to tackle that issue. But I think it's safe to say that Isleta Pueblo is very committed to this, to preventing this application from going through. So I don't know if there's more to say really, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Josh, so much for squeezing this in after being up in Durango for another water matter. Jillian, do we have questions in the chat from Josh? For Josh?
No specific questions, perhaps. They're more general to everyone. I think if we go to our next speaker, Kathy, and then we could, but I don't know if Josh needs to leave at this moment.
I can hang on for as long as my cell service holds on.
We have one question in the chat while we have Josh, because I don't, if he's needs to go, we want to make sure that he can. There's a question from Paul in the chat. Josh, is there any hard data as to the wells levels dropping in the area?
At this point in time, the answer to that question is no. We just have anecdotal information of water table dropping in Isleta's wells, but Isleta has, I think, been putting in meters when well data loggers or things to start tracking that better. So hope to have better information soon.
Great, thank you. And I think we can move to Kathy at this point.
In case we lose you, Josh, or you lose us, thank you again for jumping on and sharing the perspective from the Pueblo.
My pleasure. Thank you, Ann.
This is Kathy McCord. She could also add to her own intro, but she's a founder and board member of Valencia Water Watchers, a citizens group based in Valencia County that has done extraordinary work protecting water and really took on this Niagara application full force. So it looks like we're ready, Kathy, for you.
Okay, great. And I think when I want you to change the slide, I'll just say slide, please. Does that work?
That's great. That works.
Okay, so I am Kathy McCord. My official name is K.A. McCord. I am one of the original founders of Valencia Water Watchers. And we are a New Mexico nonprofit organization, nonprofit corporation now, founded in January of 2020, when we first got word that Niagara was preparing to ask the Los Lunas Village Council to approve them taking more water. Los Lunas had already approved them for setting up their water bottling plant in 2016 or 2017. You know, it kind of went under the wire. You know, we weren't paying all that much attention. We didn't really grasp the magnitude of what they were doing at that point. And we were all kind of thinking about other things in 2016 and 2017. So what they were asking was more than double their initial allocation of water. Slide, please. Okay, this is our mission, and this tells you who we are. A grassroots coalition of local residents. And as I've said, we have been fighting this expansion of Niagara for more than 5.5 years. Okay, slide, please. Folks, we are in a water crisis, a long-term water crisis. Once again, the river ran dry this summer. Year after year, the water for our farmers is cut off mid-summer. Now, in the middle of the desert, in the middle of permanent water shortage, in the middle of drastic climate change, look at the river there, that's a river of dry mud. Who approves a water bottling operation that takes our community water and puts it in plastic bottles for sale for corporate profit? That's kind of the question of the day. Slide, please. Okay, aquifer depletion is real. Our use of water in the Rio Grande Basin is unsustainable. The Rio Grande Basin aquifer is over allocated. I've been told it's over allocated like 4 times. Not enough serious efforts have been made to map the aquifers in this state. And this is convenient ignorance. If you don't ask the right questions, you don't have to deal with uncomfortable or inconvenient answers. Okay, next slide. Over and over and over, VWW, that's Valencia Water Watchers, rallied significant community opposition to Niagara's request for more water. Their original request came in January of 2020, and then the pandemic hit, so they went away for a year. They came back in early 2021. We rallied community opposition in February of 2021, in March of 2021, and then it kind of went away again. In July of 2022, when they were coming back, In December of 2023, when they had their water experts report that they were relying on, and then again in February of 2024. And so at this meeting, you see here with all these people, that's a meeting of the Los Lunas Village Council. The council chambers were packed to standing room only with an overflow crowd out in the lobby of concerned residents. You can see that little bright patch in the back. That's the lobby. And there were plenty of people out there who couldn't even get into the room because the fire marshal was there. Okay. This meeting was in February of 2024. The mayor opened this meeting with a proclamation that there will be no public comment. With all these people here who were coming time and time again to speak up to the village councilors, and he said, nope, no public comment. Now, this was passed. The Niagara's request was passed. Note that 3 people in a county of 81,000 people made the decision to approve Niagara's request for more water. And note that the estimated 2025 population of New Mexicans who reside in the Rio Grande Basin Aquifer region is over 1 million people. 3 people made this decision. The council vote on Niagara's request was 2 yes and 2 no. And then the mayor said, I just want to get this over with. I vote yes. And that was it. 3 people had the power to make a decision that impacts the residents of the entire basin. Next slide, please. Okay, so Niagara leases paper water rights from a P&M site in Albuquerque. Then they pump wet water, the real water, through wells in Los Lunas, and they pay the village of Los Lunas for that privilege. Get this, Niagara consistently takes even more water than their approved amount. Next slide, please. This graph covers a 6-year period from 2018 to 2024. As you can see, the yellow bits represent all the times in those 6 years when Niagara pumped more water than they are permitted to take. Basically, almost 85% of the time, they overdrew, okay? And this represents about a 13% overdraw overall of what they're allowed to take. And we don't even have the data from January 2024 to now. But here they are. They're taking more than they've been permitted of our community water. Okay, next slide, please. Niagara is not a good neighbor and is not a good steward of our water. They are a privately held corporation that just takes what they want. Back in 2007, Niagara sued the community of Groveland, Florida, so they could take water that the community did not want them to take. The community leaders said, we can't deliver this water that you want. They made a special deal with the water authority. And then the city council of this very small community of Groveland, Florida said, you know, we can't do it. We can't deliver it. Well, Niagara sued them. After almost 4 years of fighting Niagara in the courts, Groveland, they finally gave up. I mean, they're just a little community. And they had to pay $1.35 million to settle the lawsuit. And then Niagara proceeded to set up a water bottling plant in Groveland anyway. VWW is a coalition of local residents who oppose Niagara's water grab. We have filed a formal protest letters with the Office of the State Engineer. We have all argued that this taking of our community's water is contrary to the public welfare. It is contrary to water conservation. It puts New Mexico at risk of violating the Rio Grande Compact with Texas, which would be very expensive. And it leads to aquifer depletion. Serious stuff. Okay, next slide. The people have presented a robust formal protest. We have had over 50 individual protest letters. We have had protests from Isleta, from the town of Peralta councilors, and the Valencia Soil and Water Conservation District. And more than 500 VWW members joined our nonprofit organization's protest. That's pretty serious, folks. Okay, next slide, please. As a community, we have 3 very specific asks for New Mexico legislators, which are explained in more detail in the following slides. So these are the asks: modernize and fund, form and fund regional water councils, fully fund aquifer mapping, and the water data initiative. Now let's go into more details. Next slide, please. Okay, New Mexico needs to invest in long-term water planning and management. We need to put our money where our mouth is. Passing legislation and then failing to fund it accomplishes nothing. These are drastic times where we need to act and change course now, not 10 years from now. We need to do it now. Okay, next slide, please. New Mexico needs to fund the implementation of regional water councils. We cannot continue on a path that allows 3 people in a village government that benefits from the transaction to sell out the water interests of hundreds of thousands of people and ignore what the people have to say when they are opposing it. No more, there will be no public comment. Okay. Each of these regional water councils must include a majority of stakeholders from communities in that region. The people who are impacted by the decisions must be the people who make the decisions democratically. These decisions must be data-driven, and they must be made by and for the people. And the bottom line there says the Water Security Act of 2023 must be implemented as intended. Okay, next slide. So I don't know, maybe Stacy Timmons isn't here. I was going to just kind of defer to her, but I think I'll talk a little bit more about this slide. So New Mexico must fund aquifer mapping and the water data initiative. How much water is there? How do we know? We find out through aquifer mapping. And as you can see, we are advocating for hydrogeology studies, measuring, monitoring, and mapping. Okay. Monitoring itself is insufficient. We need to measure, and we need to measure more frequently, and we need to monitor more wells. And we need to make the data accessible and usable, as was outlined in the 2019 Water Data Act. Now, this is 2025. 2019 was 6 years ago, okay? We need to actually, like I said before, put our money where our mouth is. Let's really do this. Okay, last slide. Okay, if you'd like to get more information from VWW, please sign up at our website. That's valenciawaterwatchers.com. And we will be in touch. And we're going to, we're planning on creating more bumper stickers like that huge one that's on that car. Okay. Niagara, stop taking our water. We live in a desert. So get in touch with us and we'll let you know everything we know. Yeah, your bumper's not that big, right? We have smaller versions. Okay, and that's really all I have to say in this presentation, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Kathy, thank you so much. And for all the efforts of Valencia Water Watchers. It's remarkable and impressive. Please hang in and let's see what questions we have.
Thank you so much, Kathy. This is Jillian. I'm with the Water Advocates, and I've been monitoring the chat, and we have just a few questions for you, and then for our other speakers as well. If we still have Josh with us, we have one for him as well. Really impressive, the amount of community support on this and the individual protests. What is the actual status of those protest letters? Do you know in any way what the status of those protests are at this point?
Well, I know that we got everything turned in on time. We met the deadline. I know that we have 500 people, more than 500 people who joined Valencia Water Watchers specifically to be part of our organization's protest. And we have over 50 letters that individuals did submit. And of those 500 people that joined, it was something like 172 are actual residents of Valencia County. And then we got people from nearby counties who, they're also in the region of the aquifer. It's a legal process. It's a long legal process. I don't know all the details, but I know it's going to be a long process. And I know even though we are so tired, because we've been doing this for 5.5 years plus, that we're all going to hang in there and we're going to keep on doing it. And we will let people know what's going on. What else can be done? That would be a good question if Josh is here, if he could answer what else can be done now that the things have been filed.
Yeah, hi, I'm still here for the moment. I will say that, you're right on. This is a long process. The protests that Isleta has been part of in recent years have taken well over a year to even get docketed with the administrative hearing unit. Um, and so I would imagine probably 2027 is when we'll be looking at, having dates where, discovery is due and things like that. I don't imagine there will be a hearing until 2027. I could be wrong, but I think there's a lot of protests and hearings that are in the queue, and so we just if you've filed your protest letter by the deadline, then you're in. There will be a point in time where you're going to be asked to pay a $25 fee. Make sure that everybody pays that fee to keep your standing as a protestant.
Cyrilda had a lot of great questions and just comments about the Bureau of Geology's aquifer mapping program funded some years ago by the Healy Foundation. Do any of our panelists know the status of those wells, that well monitoring program, and how active it is in the region? Teresa.
I know a little bit about it. This is run out of New Mexico Tech, and they, as of about 2 years ago, were advertising at the New Mexico, the water discussion, that water conversation that was organized by the Udden Institute down in Socorro, and we're trying to recruit farmers to be participants in their analysis. There's a really good woman down there. I went to college with her, Nelia Dunbar, who is the author, the editor of the big 50-year water report that came out. I think that I think there's a role here to actually do something more. I don't know that we're going to be able to get federal funding to go after a federal grant these days. Good luck. But there are other things that can happen at the state level, regional level, even district level down to ours, where we can find money to do monitoring. Maybe we can, engage with New Mexico Tech to do what I would like to call community mapping, community monitoring. There are ways to keep working, and I just want to, advocate that we do that.
Teresa, while you're still with us, there was a good question earlier in your presentation. We've been speaking a lot of just your representation of people in the area. What has the support been for you in the state with other soil and water conservation districts? Is there more opportunity there with you all supporting each other with these efforts?
Well, we meet on a fairly regularly basis. There's a regular basis. There's going to be a meeting of the New Mexico Association of Conservation Districts next month in Albuquerque, and that's open to the public. There are going to be conservation districts from all over the state, and if you go, you can lobby these folks to get more involved because it is our mission. I'm embarrassed that Ciudad Soil and Water Conservation District, which covers all of Bernalillo County, was not involved in a protest letter. And they've got about $6.2 million coming in funding from their mill levy, quarter mill levy that they just passed. So, I mean, that's another group that can be approached. Our relationship is good with some of our surrounding conservation districts. We tend to meet annually. We also meet at the legislature in January. There's always a Soil and Water Conservation Day. So I hope that answered the question.
Thank you, Teresa. Teresa, you have one more comment while I look for another question for the group.
Thank you very much. I wanted to just advise folks that elections do matter more than the Los Lunas. I mean, there are other elections taking place in the fall. You've got Soil and Water Conservation District on ballots, and it's important to vote people that care. So I would advocate that. And then I wanted to point out another thing that is relevant. Los Lunas is annexing more and more land out in the western mesa. There is a 270 plus acre grassland out there, and it's got water rights. They're trying to grab that. There's a perfect opportunity to put pressure on the state land commissioner to move that parcel out of the General Services Division, which does not know how to manage land, put it in for the public good. Because if Los Lunas grabs it, I can tell you what's going to happen. It's going to go to Facebook or another big group that is going to just pump out more groundwater from that very same region. So we're monitoring that. We're hoping to engage the state land commissioner, and there's also an opportunity to comment until September 27th on the Regional Water Council. So, and then come to our conference. We can't give up.
Thanks so much, Teresa. We still have a few more minutes for some questions here. If you have others in the chat, please add those. We'll be looking. I have a few other here that were noted. Going back to our question of measurement, and you showed, Kathy, if you're still with us, a wonderful graph of overuse from Niagara. What is that? Where is that measuring, and what do you know about the water table data for the last couple of years? There's no data since 2024. You might want to, I'm not sure, Brittany, if we can share that chart again. But if you had any information, Kathy, about the water table data and what has declined, if anything.
I don't have any information about the water table data. I can tell you this data here came from, we filed an IPRA with Village of Los Lunas. It's like, how much water has Niagara been taking on a month-to-month basis from January of 2018, and we stopped at January of 2024 because I think we made the request in like February of 2024. And so we took the numbers and we put it in a spreadsheet, and then we generated this graph that shows, they were taking more than they were allowed to take almost 85% of the time. And when you look at it all, it does average out to almost 13% more than what they're permitted to take. But no, we don't have water table data. That's why we are advocating for significant aquifer mapping.
Thank you, Kathy. One other question in the chat from Jean that I think pertains to you, Kathy. Do you have a list, or do any of you know of a list of the companies that Niagara bottles for besides Costco? We know Costco's on the list. Who are the other corroborating companies involved in this?
That
Kathy.
Bottle
information,
for Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, and Costco.
that information is available pretty easily online. We've seen it before. I don't know off the top of my head, but it's not just Costco. I think it's even the water that's not called Niagara water, but it's something else that's at Smith's, and it's all over the place.
Yep, we have just a few more questions here in the chat. Jeannie, thanks for Jean for participating. Do we know how much Niagara pays for the water it gets from Los Lunas Water Authority? Does it pay when it uses more than it's allocated? Is any of that in public record?
It is. We have done some IPRAs. We haven't filed IPRAs recently, so we need to get more data. Yeah, they pay. We need to get a comparison as to what their rate is as opposed to what the residents pay. And they pay, we're still trying to get some information, but it appears that they pay kind of a pittance when they go over. So we need to get more detailed information about that with more IPRAs. So that's kind of an answer.
Thank you so much. I do think that Norm wanted to had some time for some wrap-up comments about the legal. Well, I'm going to let Norm introduce himself and what he wanted to speak on, but it's a wrap-up of the whole evening tonight, I believe.
Thank you so much, Brittany. Norm, take it away, and then we'll have some announcements at the end for our next workshop. And thank you all for staying with us.
Thank you, everybody. Let me get this. Let me get this going.
No, not that one. Thank you, that one.
So I protested. This is not a water advocates transaction. I decided to protest the permit application we're talking about myself personally. And so let me just go over what I'm protesting about. First of all, the law kind of says that the changes that are under consideration can be made if they're not without detriment to existing water rights, are not contrary to the conservation of water within the state, and are not detrimental to the public welfare of the state. Those are quotations. And I believe, and the presenters tonight have just done a wonderful job, telling you in very simple language that I can't use or don't use often enough about what this is all about. And so I just wanted to go to some slides that I presented to the Legislative's Interim Water and Natural Resources Committee last Friday in Taos that were kind of disruptive to their meeting. It engendered a lively discussion, to say the least. So with regard to the public welfare of the state, water is not being fairly distributed. The water that the middle Rio Grande owes the lower Rio Grande isn't making it. That's what the compact dispute's all about. I visited Elephant Butte Reservoir and took this photograph when I was coming back from Las Cruces recently. And the little arrow points to the level of the reservoir when I visited in April after being in Silver City. And what you should know is that the water that the Middle Valley owes to Elephant Butte Reservoir would fill up most of that gap. The debt is burgeoning. I sat in on an ISC meeting today where the staff report said that we're minus 124,000 acre feet in our deliveries. We owe that much water to Elephant Butte. Well, that was what the agreement, the agreed accounting was. as of the first of the year, but we've racked up a lot more debts in the intervening months. And right now, according to the Bureau of Reclamation, we stand at 167,600 acre feet behind. And very frankly, I just don't see how we're going to avoid violating the United States Supreme Court or the compact, which would be enforced by the Supreme Court in a brand new lawsuit focused on Middle Rio Grande overuse. And clearly, approval of an application to pump more groundwater under these circumstances would be detrimental to the public welfare of the state. This is what Elephant Butte Reservoir looks like. It's really low. And after I took this photograph, they took another 10 to 14,000 acre feet out of it to refill Cavallo Reservoir. So it's even lower now. But if our debit were, if what we owed were satisfied, you would see a lot less bare rock and a whole lot more water. You know, and it's not like this is a new thing. This is what it looked like in August 3 years ago. And the reason is that, I mean, one of the fundamental points that I tried to get the legislators to pay attention to, and they were paying attention, is our water resources are down almost 400,000 acre feet per year. That's a full third. In the last 1/3 of the last 50 years than in the first 1/3. In the first 1/3, we had 10 of 17 years that had over 1 million acre feet. In the last 1/3, we've only had 4. And the mean is almost 400,000 acre feet lower. This isn't drought. It's permanent drying. You know, this year, the San Juan Chama project decrease was 69% of what they used to call the firm supply. We can't make it worse by doing things like this. We have to transform what we are doing because what we're doing is not working. So that would be my comment to you all. Thank you so much, Teresa, Kathy, and Josh. Great presentations. It's great to know Isleta is in this to the end. And I'm in this just to make sure as best I can that these arguments are there. With Isleta Pueblo in the lawsuit, my participation won't be needed, but I wanted to make sure these are brought forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Norm. If you can unshare, I'll share our closing slides. Thank you so much for everyone for sticking with us. This has been a fabulous presentation by everyone on a very important matter. Give me 1 second here, get this pulled up. Our October speaker series will be on another water boondoggle, the data centers, Project Jupiter, and the potential data centers that Blackstone is considering. Blackstone is working to try to take over PNM, and we know that one of the reasons they're doing that is to try to put more data centers in New Mexico. We'll have a fabulous article about that in our October newsletter, so please stay tuned for that. I'm going to quickly drop the link to register for the October workshop in the chat. I do wanted to let you know that we are a little behind the game in getting our confirmation from our speakers. Mariel has kindly confirmed already, but we do have a legislator who is interested in speaking. I just don't have her final confirmation that she's available for our time and date yet. But we do hope to have a New Mexico legislature speak on this as well, and a community member from down around where Project Jupiter is being proposed is also going to be speaking if we can get them confirmed as well. So I dropped the registration in the chat for you. We always like to do your part because it's hard to listen to all of this bad news and feel helpless, and we're not helpless. We can make a difference as a community members. I think that was shown very strongly with how many people signed up with Valencia Water Watchers to booster their protest against Niagara. So keep at it, keep your advocacy going. The New Mexico ISC is working on promulgating the rules and regulations for the Water Planning Security Act. The New Mexico water advocates do not feel like the current rules are robust enough to ensure adequate planning for New Mexico, especially in light of these bad water projects that keep getting put forth and getting all of the attention from the legislature. So the deadline to submit comments on those rules is September 27th. And I am going to drop that link in the chat as well. So please go ahead and make comments on those rule sets so that you can tell the ISC how they can do a better job at ensuring that we have good water planning in New Mexico, right? That's how we can move out of this aridity and climate crisis, is to work together as community members to determine what's important to us as a community. And we have enough water to supply our needs if we don't use them for things that are unneeded and don't support our community. We'll have a newsletter coming out as the time progresses. As Kathy and Teresa and Josh explained, the Niagara protest is a very long administrative process through the Office of the State Engineer and could take many years, but keep looking for our newsletter. We will update you as updates come out. So keep your eye out on our newsletter for that. And as I mentioned, we'll have a nice article about Blackstone and PNM in the October newsletter as a teaser or taste to set you up for our October speaker series. And then we just want to encourage you to help us build the courage of our leaders to confront water problems instead of letting them fester. Call your legislatures and remind them how important it is for water planning, that we need to put money towards the good water bills that they've passed and stop putting money towards these bright, shiny, distracting, bad water projects like produced water and data centers. We don't have the water to afford that use, but we do have the water to protect New Mexico and New Mexicans' future generations. I just want to thank our sponsors for this evening. Thank you so much to New Mexico Water Dialogue, Amigos Bravos, 350 New Mexico, Interfaith Power and Light, and the League of Women Voters. We couldn't do it without you. We so appreciate your co-sponsorship. And last but not least, if you enjoyed our presentation tonight, we are an all-volunteer organization, a 503c organization. We are always looking for volunteers, and if you're interested in donating, every donation helps, and every donation, 100% goes towards producing the activities that you see here, our workshops, our newsletter, our legislative outreach. So anything that you can provide would be greatly appreciated. And we look forward to seeing you back here on the third Thursday in October. That's October 16th. And we hope that you have a fabulous evening. Thank you for sticking with us this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brittany. Wonderful.
Night all.
Good night.